Peni.
And the State Department of Corrections is now calling them an emerging public threat. Chris Blatchford is here to expose this group for the first time on TV. Chris.
Also known as the Peni Death Squad, law enforcement intelligence says the gang is increasing recruitment efforts in the ranks of white supremacist skinheads. And as we see in this Fox Undercover report, the Peni is making a push for power in prisons, but also out on the streets. This dog's owner belongs to a group so taken with violence.
His name's Hitman Tank.
He jokes even his pit bull carries a sawed-off shotgun. But later, seeing the dog in action, it's arguable Tank doesn't need a weapon. He is one.
If I don't have a gat, I start bombing on somebody, my dog locks on you too. So it's a little teamwork. Good boy, Tank.
And as night falls in this remote area near Big Bear,
Myself, I have over 300 guns.
the tattooed hands of Tank's owner ready a .38 revolver. Quickly use it to demonstrate his murderous method. He is a shot caller in a gang called Public Enemy Number 1. Mostly known as Peni, sometimes referred to as PDS, short for the Peni Death Squad. Ready to kill enemies and snitches.
I'll end up with one of these when I got 16 gauge right here. Guarantee you won't get up if I blast you, you know?
As far as we can determine, Peni started in Long Beach about 1986. A small group of teenagers stealing their name from a hardcore punk rock band called Rudimentary Peni.
Rudimentary Peni, that's how Peni started.
This Peni member, in a police tape obtained by Fox 11 News, remembers the beginning.
When we were kids, and when we started this as kids, we were all punk rockers at Disneyland.
He is Brody Davis, a parolee who has done time for intimidating a witness. A far cry from Disneyland, he and his Peni brothers put down roots in the white supremacist skinhead movement, fertilized by hate, still blossoming into racist anger. By the early 90s, Peni had moved to Orange County, which became its main stomping grounds. Anaheim became a familiar haunt. Detective Tim Miller remembers them for auto theft, burglaries, and drug activity.
They were all into dope. Using methamphetamine was really the big thing, drug of choice.
7 grams.
Now, the drug culture runs through the veins of the Peni organization like blood.
This is what you call methamphetamines, glass.
Especially methamphetamines. But in all fairness, some Peni talk against the use of drugs.
That we don't all do drugs. Do you know what a skinhead is? A skinhead is a working class man that doesn't do drugs.
Everybody wants.
But clearly,
That's number one drug.
it appears Peni use of meth is epidemic.
Everybody's on it. So all it is just crack. It's another form of crack.
And also, for Peni,
I just do this for the money.
meth is a major source of income.
I'll do jail time, I'll do whatever I have to do to make the money, to get my coin, you know, and I live by the code of silence.
And he lives on the profits of drug sales.
Probably about $400 a day, but I'm not really pushing the issue.
He says he gets the dope from Peni buddies.
Partners make it.
For a while, they were making it here.
Manufacturing, speed.
That's until the dangerous chemicals used to make meth exploded.
We got a spark and the house went up.
Apparently, flames destroyed the cabin before firefighters and police arrived.
Well, I usually have it turned on.
These Peni often monitor police activity on a scanner.
For blast.
And according to law enforcement intelligence obtained by Fox 11 News,
Put some holes in mother head.
Peni are actively recruiting new members to protect their interests
Kill.
and strengthen their position among other white criminal elements.
Kill.
Department of Corrections gang officer Wes Harris.
These groups are going to start popping up everywhere, and they are extremely violent.
He says Peni sees themselves as Viking warriors, true to pagan Nordic gods, a die-on-your-shield philosophy, and no remorse. It fits well with a group that has evolved from punk rockers to racist skinheads to a gang of thugs moving into organized crime.
In this business of guns, speed, violence, and sex, that's what it's all about.
And law enforcement sources say there is an alarming chain of events launching Peni's power, causing an alliance with another well-known white supremacist group and threatening to beef up Peni's influence in prison yards and out on the street. We'll have that story tomorrow.
Public enemy number one, or Peni, and investigators warn this group, learning from the mistakes of other white supremacist gangs, are emerging as a public threat. Chris Blanchford is here with more. Chris.
And law enforcement authorities believe Peni, with their roots in the streets, are now positioning themselves as a criminal force inside prison walls. And as we see in this Fox Undercover report, cops say Peni violence can already reach from prison yards to neighborhood streets. Investigators say it was ordered from within inside prison walls. A prison-based hit. And according to court papers obtained by Fox 11, Donald Mazza is the man who was given the mission to murder. Racial loyalty tattooed on his chest. He is the reputed president of a white supremacist gang called Peni, or the Peni Death Squad. And when this heavy metal door at Wasco State Prison cranked open in April of 1999, inmate Mazza, known as Popeye, was released on parole. Detectives say within 5 hours of his release, Popeye was back in Orange County, seated inside a camper smoking methamphetamine with 2 accomplices and the hit victim, a gang dropout named Billy Ray Austin. According to this felony complaint, Dominic Rizzo, another Peni parolee, beat and held Austin as Popeye plunged a knife into him over and over again. Then, Popeye turned to witnesses and said, "Want some too, punk?"
This particular group has a very great potential for violence and are pretty much unpredictable when that violence may occur.
Correctional Officer Wes Harris says, here at the Wasco State Prison, investigators first started noticing Peni in 1996. And Fox 11 has learned an interesting chain of events led up to that. It started decades ago with members of the Aryan Brotherhood, or AB, the gang of gangs among white supremacists. Led by convicted killer John Stinson, the AB are locked away in special units at maximum security prisons like this one at Pelican Bay. This white supremacist ex-convict explains it simply.
I don't know if too many ABs walk in the yard because ABs are all locked down and they don't have any physical contact with anybody.
With AB lockdown, that gave rise to the Nazi Lowriders, or NLR, another white supremacist gang that started running the prison yards in the 1990s and calling the shots for white Nazi gangs out in the streets.
They're straight killers. The lowriders are killers. They're like a rattlesnake. You walk across their shaded area and they're just liable to strike you without much of a warning at all.
And without much warning at all. In January of 1999, the NLR was snake bit itself. The Department of Corrections named NLR a prison gang. And its members, like the Aryan Brotherhood, are now locked down in special security cells. And that has opened a prison door for Peni.
We are getting intelligence that they are stepping up to take the place of the Nazi lowriders from the main line.
And other law enforcement sources tell us Popeye Mazza, Dominic Rizzo, and Devlin Gazoo Stringfellow are all Peni shot callers who have formed alliances with bosses in the NLR and the AB. All still embrace their white supremacist philosophy.
100% to the bone. If you ain't white, you ain't right. And that's how it is.
But law enforcement intelligence obtained by Fox 11 says Peni are now modeling themselves into a more seasoned prison gang. Their main goal now is to profit from drug sales.
I saw it for $125 an 8-ball.
Especially methamphetamines.
It's a white man's drug.
Not only out here on the street, but here inside prison walls. In fact, cops say Peni wants to increase its control of all criminal activity by white inmates.
They are under directives when they're paroled to start building a cell of members from their area.
This correspondence intercepted by law enforcement talks about Peni expansion into Riverside County. The Peni letter says, "We're like gods up here." The area, he adds, is ripe for a Peni yuppie squad. In Ventura County, police intelligence reveals a Peni alliance with the murderous gang Skinhead Dogs. Additionally, state corrections officials have Peni members in custody from Sacramento, Redding, Los Angeles, Shasta, Kern, and Orange counties. Now, even a younger breed of Peni like 18-year-old Brian O'Leary are leaving a trail of violence. Peni tattooed on his neck, Death Squad on his arms, and more Peni carved on his stomach. O'Leary paired up with young skinhead Anthony Bailey. They attacked an ex-white supremacist in Huntington Beach.
One guy took a knife, stabbed him twice. Another guy took a baseball bat, hit him upside the head.
Officer Gary Faust says O'Leary got 15 years in prison. Bailey, 12 years behind bars.
Basically what happened was the victim had talked trash about Peni.
There is no doubt Peni, figuratively and literally, have put on white supremacist brass knuckles.
I play soccer with this, you're not gonna get up. You don't see that.
And gang investigators guarantee that Peni has already moved beyond its neo-Nazi beginnings into organized crime. At the same time, attorneys for reputed Peni leaders Donald Mazza and Dominic Rizzo say their clients are not guilty of conspiracy to murder charges that they now face in Orange County. And they, quote, look forward to the truth coming out at trial. And that's scheduled to begin early next week. John?
Suppose we can expect an update then. Chris, thanks for that intense look.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Green Lake Gang TV. Really excited to bring you guys this video today. I got those old news clips up. We're going to be talking about Public Enemy Number 1, developed into Peni Death Squad. Man, just crazy story. A lot of moving parts. Kind of one of the main focuses of this is going to be Donald Reed Popeye Mazza. He became known as one of the nation's, the first national leader of this Public Enemy Number 1 street gang, developed the Peni Death Squad, which really got a rep inside of prison, outside of prison. So, really quick, Public Enemy Number 1 developed in Long Beach, California in 1986. Basically, though, from there, its headquarters became Orange County, California. Now, they have a really, really interesting origin story because when you think of kind of white prison gangs and the dominant white prison gangs, and you would correctly assume it's the Aryan Brotherhood, okay? But how Public Enemy Number 1 got to its power, we're going to get into that in a minute, is very, very interesting. And some of the crimes they were committing also were different from what you would expect from most criminal street gangs and prison gangs, right? Because most of the time it's robbery, murder, drug dealing, prostitution, murder for hire, extortion kinds of things. But Public Enemy Number 1 was actually engaging in a lot of white-collar crime, credit card fraud, mortgage fraud, bank fraud, identity theft at a very, very high level. And it's just interesting. It's really interesting to see how they developed that and how they gained power and kept power for a very, very long time. So I found a really good article on longbeacheyes.com written by a guy named Brian Addison, May 19th, 2023. We're going to be reading from that and just give you guys a really good breakdown. And it goes into there's a lot of different moving parts with this gang. It's not so basic, right? And I feel like I just want to really explain all the different layers to this as best I can. So, here we go. Long Beach likely doesn't know Donald Reed Popeye Mazza, the man who largely became the most known leader of the nation's first hybrid street prison gang, Public Enemy Number 1, after it moved its home base from Long Beach to Orange County, nor were they likely paying much attention when he admitted last year in court he was going to kill one of his fellow gang members for fear of retaliation from the Aryan Brotherhood. What you should know is that he attempted to pull off one of the most absurd attempts at removing himself from his horrid love affair with white supremacy, violence, and crime. This is kind of funny. And I put the picture up. When he decided to get baptized in 2014 and try to use that as evidence in order to get out of jail. Right? Changed life. Now I'm a Christian. I hate to say it, but it happens all the time. And it really makes guys that did change their life around look bad when people just use this that are in prison. It's kind of why there's a running joke that, oh yeah, they found God when they got locked up, right? And sometimes it's true. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes it takes going to your absolute lowest to happen. For me, I get it. I've done enough jail time to know that I didn't really start reading the Bible and start reading things until I got locked up. The thing is, though, once you get out, can you maintain that? Can you change your life and go one day at a time? Because being locked up's easy. Getting in a routine's easy. What about when you hit the streets? What about when you can control everything like you can control on the inside? That's the real challenge. Can you stay sober? Can you stay away from people you shouldn't be with? That's where people really come to a fork in the road and decide which way they're going to go. So, continuing on. He tries this ploy. He gets baptized in 2014. Use that in order to get out of jail. That fails miserably. And like many forms of hate, it represents the willingness and the lengths with which people are willing to go and the showmanship in which they show, a lot of these leaders show, and they partake in as their power begins to get strangled a lot of times by the U.S. government. And when the U.S. government hones in on you, it is a wrap. They are going to come and they're going to bury you under the jail. And with the FBI's 2020 hate crime statistics updated earlier this year, it's a stark reminder that even in the liberal bastion that is most of Southern California, these ideologies remain alive and well throughout Los Angeles and Orange County. And that is very true. California is known for liberal, being accepting of all people, right? Race, creed, gender, your sexuality, right? California, liberal, accepting of all. But on the flip side, California's legal system, their corrections department is so viciously separated by race and by beliefs, and it's just crazy that the underbelly of California is so racist and so divided. But on the outside looking in, you would think California, here's this big liberal state that's all accepting, and you can move there and everybody's going to love you and accept you for who you are. Not so much. There's a lot of hate. There's a lot of judgment that goes on even in a place like California. So public enemy number one is anything but Christian, and the people I've spoken to on this still wish to remain anonymous for fear of retaliation. This person, Addison, wrote an article 7 years ago, and that's what he says. These people are still afraid to talk to him. Quote, "I'm not talking any more on it," said one contact via text. Goes on to say, quote, "Mazza might be a mess, but that doesn't make it dangerous as F to discuss, especially online. Do not text me about this again," end quote. Other past members or affiliates who have spoken on public enemy number one on the record have resulted in dangerous, if not outright life-taking situations. One of its most profiled cases was that of Scott Miller, a Long Beach-based founding member of public enemy number one, who was executed in the back of the head with a 9mm handgun by Michael Allen Lamb and Jacob Anthony Rump on March 8th, 2002. This gives you an idea how far back this stuff goes. That is 22 years ago, guys. Okay? After he gave Los Angeles Fox News affiliate an on-camera interview. Yes, those interviews, those news stories you just watched, that gentleman in there, and I believe he's the gentleman with the dog, he was executed for that interview you guys just watched. So really, really crazy. That's why I was so anxious to get that out to you, because it all ties in. Miller, like many during the initial forming of public enemy number one, wasn't necessarily filled with hate in the beginning, but he was at least initially a punk. In fact, the name of the group acts as a double entendre, playing with both public enemy number one and the 1980s British punk band Rudimentary Peni. And this is important. It does not have any formal ties to the street gang. "Scott Miller was my friend," end quote, said a non-member and old school punker who now resides out of the country. His nickname was Scottish. Started off as a tough surf punk kid, and as his rep grew, he got caught up in his own fantasy of what being tough really meant. When we were about 19, he shot the leader of the LA Death Squad, aka LADS, and after that, he became like a god to all of those in Huntington Beach, California skinheads. And then from there, it goes downhill like it often does. And I could speak to this. When I was 18, 19, I really picked up with thinking I was some big drug dealer, thinking I was some hot shot. Moved back home. Addiction picked up, but so did my narcotics selling, making money, doing my thing, girls. And man, now looking back, it was so short-lived because I went downhill so fast. And obviously this is on a totally different scale. But when you're 18, 19, and you're living that fast life, fast money, girls, it's intoxicating. So, talking about a little bit about the music scene, the American punk scene, which originated in the East Coast, and anti-authoritative groups that espoused a deep intolerance toward hatred, became snarled in violence when it arrived in LA, particularly between 1983 and 1986. Remember, Public Enemy number one was founded in Long Beach in 1986. Okay? Talks about books, talks about these punk groups kind of rise to power, and how Public Enemy number one really is tangled up in that. okay? You saw how their name was tied to the British singer, okay? And it talks about how a lot of these guys grew up as just middle-class kids. One guy talks about how he grew up as a middle-class kid on the East Coast. He moved to Long Beach as a teenager. I was dropped in the middle of a lot of insane things. Being a punker back home, we were just kind of arty, weird kids into fun, aggressive music. But then you come to L.A., drugs, gangs, and he says, quote, plain out lunacy. And what you're seeing is the development of the gang, and what you're seeing is the stakes being risen. Goes on to Public Enemy number one's glorification of violence and its epicenter in Long Beach. It is the glorification of violence and inter-gang beef that proved Miller's murder of an LADS member so potent. LADS, which had an intimate allyship with LMP, and that is the La Miranda. I'll get to that in a sec, guys, exactly what it is. But all these are short for their subset gangs, right? Subset groups, okay? They fought with everybody. From the Suicidals, from Venice to Long Beach's own Vicious Circle. These are all just groups. Come a few years down the road, a guy called Gangster started the Southside LADS, representing the Long Beach area in Orange County with a mixture of whites and Latinos. This marked its turn into a full-fledged gang operation, selling drugs, home invasion, violence, violence, violence. The result was a convoluted mess of identities, missions, and philosophies. Following the murder by Miller, some of the SSLADS joined Public Enemy number one, or the far more powerful Aryan Brotherhood. And that's how these other prison gangs and street gangs start to get really tied into each other. While the Latinos separated into full-on barrio gangs and furthering the racial divide. So yeah, there was a little mix there, and then quickly that went away. And they're developing their own gangs. This made Long Beach, in between Hollywood and Orange County, one of the hotbeds for gang violence. Fender's Ballroom in Long Beach in the effing 80s, said a former member of LADS. Shit, was like a weekly UFC fight. Anyone who was anyone in a gang would go there, beat the crap out of each other, and toward the end, another one, Sons of Samoa, a Samoan gang, a Long Beach-based Samoan gang that was an extension of the Crips, got involved. People ended up getting stabbed and shot, so the place got shut down. It earned the club's name Fender's Ballroom. And again, what you're seeing is sticks. You're seeing groups develop out of punk music, fun, maybe a little hell-raising, rebellion, then fights, fist fights, gangs being divided. Now all of a sudden, the racial divide, and now all of a sudden, it goes into knives, guns, people are dying. Public Enemy number one's thus simultaneously gained power but lost it as the artists of the punk scene, from Henry Rollins, who denounced it from the get-go, to Jack Grisham, who admitted he contributed to it, began to see it as a tangible detriment. Public Enemy number one had to move operations. As it slowly left its Long Beach roots and headed south into Orange County during the 90s, it became more notorious, more violent, led by its obsession with drug trafficking, prostitution, and identity theft as they recruited latchkey kids, bored upper middle class white kids. Latchkey kids was a term used in the 80s. Latchkey kids because things had changed. 50s, 60s, 70s, mom was a stay-at-home mom. Well, that changed in the 80s. Now both parents were working. So that's the term latchkey kids. Kids would come home from school. There's nobody there, right? So they're watching TV. MTV's getting developed. They're watching other things. They're getting involved in other things. That's where you get that term. And I encourage anybody to kind of look that up. And what you're seeing is the growth of Public Enemy number one. However, the execution of Miller marked a significant growth for Public Enemy number one. According to the Anti-Defamation League, Pen 1's increasing strength stems to a large degree from its ability to position itself as a white power criminal organization capable of operating, this is important, on the streets and in the prison yards as foot soldiers for older, more established white supremacist prison gangs such as Aryan Brotherhood. One source put it this way: part of the reason the gang grew in prison is that the AB is a validated prison gang, and thus members are put in SHU, Special Housing Unit, otherwise known as solitary confinement. And this is true, guys. So these well-known prison gangs, AB, these guys are getting put in the SHU, locked up. They're not on the main yard, and somebody has to run those main yards. So then it got passed to the NLR, the Nazi lowriders. I will be doing a video on them next. The NLR. And once the NLR, the Nazi lowriders, get validated, it goes to Public Enemy number one. That is how their power really, really begin to grow. When I see them at the observatory in Santa Ana, it still turns my stomach, but people told me it's too hard to identify them and it's impossible to have a dress code enforced at punk shows. You don't really see them in Long Beach unless they come in for a random show. It's always been more of an Orange County thing. In short, after the AB was state designated as a prison gang, thus dwindling its power through harsher sentencing, that equally dwindled operation like drug sales. The Nazi lowrider actors as foot soldiers for the AB, helping connect it into the drug world and beyond. However, the lowriders soon earned the same designation, sending their key members to the SHU, prompting Public Enemy number 1 to take over since they are not technically a prison gang, according to California Department of Corrections guidelines. That is so important, guys. A prison gang is defined as a group that is developed in prison and exists for the purpose of inside activity. Although foot soldiers on the outside are not uncommon, those harsher sentences we mentioned, they're auto-assigned to go to the SHU, prompting segregation from the rest of the population. A regular inmate can only be sentenced to the SHU if he or she is a threat to institutional security or has been rigorously proven to be an associate of the prison gang. The result, ? A rise in the clout for Public Enemy number 1, and I cannot emphasize that enough. How Mazza became the face of Pen 1 and invited massive scrutiny from authorities. This was cemented by aforementioned Popeye Mazza, one of the leaders of Public Enemy number 1 and the founder of the Peni Death Squad, as well as one of the 3 members given SHU sentences when their cases finally came through. Nick Droopy Rizzo and Devlin Gazoo Stringfellow joined Mazza due to their connections to the AB and Nazi lowriders. Mazza's creation of the Peni Death Squad was a major turn in Public Enemy number 1's history. To be a member, one had to murder an enemy. Mazza eventually earned his, quote, dancing shoes, which means he killed somebody, with the Aryan Brotherhood in the summer of 2005 at Pelican Bay State Prison, meaning he was an official member of the Brotherhood and further adding to the clout of the Peni Public Enemy number 1 on both the inside and outside. Between 2004 and 2007, Public Enemy number 1's ranks doubled to an estimated 400 members. This surge in clout and membership brought about 2 major blows to Public Enemy number 1's operations from law enforcement agencies that decade, specifically 2006 and 2010. And this is where they really start getting in trouble. They had a big investigation in 2006, 67 alleged members of the gang, 75 locations. 2010, there was an Operation Stormfront after a large white supremacy message board of the same name, led by the arrest of 34 alleged members. And this is really how they put the clamps down on these prison gangs and on these guys, and now Public Enemy number 1. Okay? Now, just months after being released from prison on June 13th, 2015, after agreeing to a plea deal in 2007, a guy by the name of Craig Tabner, he had just done 6 years in prison. He allegedly stabbed 22-year-old Cheyenne Mazzari in the upper torso multiple times outside a bar in Laguna on September 8th of the year. The case divided a community, with family members urging to charge the crime as a hate crime, and prosecutors saying they lacked evidence. Now, these are all cases tied back to Public Enemy number 1. Another one of Public Enemy number 1 most disturbing violators of human decency, Billy Joe Johnson, was sentenced to death in 2009. He was not only involved in the guy Miller that we talked about earlier, but 2 other murders. And Miller's the guy that gave the interview to Fox News back in 2002. But 2 other murders: Clyde Nordine, killed with a pickaxe, and Corey Lamone's killed with a claw hammer. And the murder with which Tabner was connected with. The latter murder was intended to simply be a torturing, with Johnson trying to extract information about the location of stolen money. Ended up killing the guy. The violence and hate hasn't stopped. The aforementioned one of the leaders, the guy that went to the SHU, Gazoo, and one of the SoCal kingpins of Public Enemy number 1, he was murdered in 2018 in Folsom State Prison by fellow inmates. It just doesn't stop. Right? So this is kind of, guys, it's kind of a same story, a same warning story, but the way that they rose to power and the details, it's just kind of crazy. And then, of course, I didn't laugh, but it is kind of funny seeing Mazza getting baptized there, trying to get out of his crimes. He turned informant, spoke out against the gang, all that crap. But anyway, there you guys have it. Really hope you guys enjoyed the video. I had a lot of fun making this video, mainly because I was excited. I learned some new techniques for getting some of these old news clips. So anyway, guys, it means so much when you watch these. Until next time, peace.